So, as the floodgates for the PSVR2 coverage open up, I have a packed few weeks of dedicated reviews, info and more coming up. And with the wealth of over 40 games hitting the launch window, and I've been provided with review code for a good selection of those, and they keep coming, I wanted to offer you a fast look at some of the best games I've tried out so far, and you can try out in your new headsets, both in quality, immersion, and also ease of entry if you're new to the VR space. If you've not taken the plunge for VR as yet, then hopefully this video can help you decide if the PSVR works for you or not. And some of these are free updates or upgrades on titles you may already own, and some are updates on PSVR 1 titles. Also, the PSN store has demo choices of titles that you can test free of charge if you do have the PSVR 2 in hand, or it's on its way. So let's get our helmets on and dive into the very first game. Better way to kick off than what is possibly the closest to a killer app for PSVR 2 in Polyphony Digital's incredible free update on GT7. Taking the foundations they delivered in the limited GT Sport on the PSVR 1, that update offered a small selection of tracks, time trials and single opponent races, but here the full game including multiplayer or missions, races and licenses with a packed grid of cars to really test your skills and blow your mind, including much better AI. The new VR car view has a selection of locales to drool over your virtual mobile, and even the replay now has a dedicated VR replay option, putting you in the perfect spot for some live racing action. Just don't tell health and safety. The meat of the update though is the sheer immersion and improvement this VR world opens up to you. From the increase in visibility in VR, far more accurate depth perception, the detail of the cars, the tracks, the opponents, it's all a game changer, metaphorically and literally. The increase in your driving skills, being able to use many real-world advantages that are not possible in 2D, using a full wheel pedals and headphone setup as I am here, you can forget you're sitting in your house in slippers wearing a helmet and live your Ayrton Senna dreams, using your head to look into the apex judge distance much better, meaning you can slide the car, control the slides, push everything closer to the edge as you would on a real track. Now, as I am a two-wheeled nut both track and road over my many years, I really appreciate just how much closer to the real thing this is, and I still long for a sequel to the exquisite Tourist Trophy, or maybe even a TT mode added to GT7, as being able to hoon around in a two-wheeled VR version around the greatest road race on earth from the likes of Jeff Duke's Norton Wins, Halewood, Agostini, Dunlop et al. It would be a perfect addition to what is a phenomenal improvement over the base PS5 title. I will have a full review up soon comparing it to GT Sport, the 2D versions and more, but at a high level the only real cuts on the VR mode come from subtle reductions in level of detail, grass, bloom, shadow resolution and resolution overall, which displays dual screens per eye with that eye tracking pervaded rendering added in to improve the quality. This is always going to be a big conversation in terms of the output screen you see here and what you actually see in the headset, along with that OLED screen in the headset, which improves everything dramatically. But all the technical discussions we can leave until that. The impact and sheer exhilaration you get whilst popping your helmet on around your favourite tracks and trying a convertible, as this is even more impressive, adding to the sensation of speed the game offers anyway. Although my big tip is use a wheel and pedals if you can, as it just adds so much to this incredible update, one that you simply cannot ignore. Populous was a revelation back in the 80s when it landed on the ST and Amiga. Being designed with the ST as its focus, it managed to achieve an incredible level of passion in saving your own people, building a safe area to live, or just bringing fire and brimstone down on them all. Townsman VR follows the very old God game ethos, but instead of being a deity of sorts, you are a floating leader plopped right in the middle of your own little island as you save, build, nurture and expand your colony. From harvesting wood, stone, food and water, your skills expand and the strategic element is well balanced with a decent but long tutorial that gets you accustomed to the UI and how this all works. Originally released as a standard isometric strategy game in 2019 across all formats, this fresh VR update really shows off how VR can transform the same game into something much more. The feeling of being a child with your toys laid out in front of you as you recreated medieval battles or just soldiers is so captivating. With the VR slant, everything becomes so tactile, from changing the scale of your presence, picking up townsfolk, dogs, cats, and even fishing. As your godlike powers expand, you will sail off to bigger isles, build taverns, lighthouses, castles, and defend it all against the Black Knight henchmen. The joy and peace you get from building up the town as they make food, chop wood, build wells is such a nice shift of pace, as you do all these things far more physically than with a mouse and controller. You're more invested and sad when things go wrong. It also scores high on the VR sickness level, being a perfect game to acclimatise yourself to VR for the very first time. With sharp, clean graphics, a simple and physical traversal system, and a very stable and slow-paced world. This has come from an Oculus port, and it is one of the titles that shows off that porting from them to this is going to be much easier due to the similarities. So there's more titles that can now be delivered both on PC and PS5 space. And as a big fan of the megalomaniac populist types of games, this God Sim really has me hooked, and it remains one of my early favourites in the launch title. So if you can try it out, I do recommend it.
But this is just the first island we encountered. We need to get back to our king.
This is as far as you get with what you paid me, and I don't like to renegotiate. So long.
Next up, we have Kayak VR Mirage, which is one that goes from a relaxing days of being a god to another that really highlights the quality that the PSVR OLED screen offers, as I mentioned in my GT7 section, specifically in those night sections here. It's impossible to replicate here in 2D on a capture over YouTube, but in the headset, the nighttime rowing is equal parts wondrous and eerie. Dipping your head under a dark ocean does have an eerie, realistic sense due to the way HDR and the accurate contrast and lighting tones play off the water, the rocks, and the translucency. Being a UE4 title, it embraces the visual leaps the PSVR2 can offer, with excellent physically based properties, various realistic locations and lighting, and some of the best water physics this side of Wave Race 64. The haptics and physics in the game are equally as impressive as the HDR OLED use. From bouncing a beach ball, pushing off a rock, to ducking under low icebergs, you quickly lose all sense of reality and escape into these idyllic and tranquil locales. But they can be filled with storms, penguins, dolphins, and much more. And online race mechanics with ghost rivals, you have a game that is equal parts a showcase for the true leap the PSVR 2 has in its visuals and haptics, but also a form of workout that can actually have you building those muscles and pumping the heart as you keep the kayak in line and on course. It will be a game that is played in medium to small bursts, but has long legs, and I can already see it kicking off a virtual exercise market with the excellent physical tracking control that has been significantly improved from the pre-launch code I had, and the workout that it offers, at least once you get your sea legs.
Chris? What the hell?
Sorry, Ethan.
No!
Now, VR and horror go hand in glove, and with the latest entry in the closing saga of Ethan Winters always pegged to have a VR mode like 7 did, we now get the free upgrade to retread his salvation tale into the vampire's den. Like many titles here, I will be covering it in more depth, but from a rough technical perspective, this is the entirety of the full game, but significantly improved on the pant-filling levels. The game and the RE engine were already designed with high performance and quality in mind and supporting VR as they shipped RE7 with a full PSVR mode. And like that game, you can now enjoy it all again within the helmet. One note is the way to access it is not 100% clear, but to keep everyone from downloading the VR mode if they don't have VR, it is modularized into DLC. So jump on the store and download the free VR update, and then it will be added to your game the next time you boot. All your saves and rewards don't carry over, but you do get a full tutorial section to get you ready for the horror that awaits. Now, this is another title that greatly benefits from the OLED screen's bright output, deep blacks, and exceptional contrast ratio, and in fact, in many points looks better than on a 2D screen, even an OLED one. Again, you lose most of the VR impact in 2D anyway, but the screen quality adds to this game as it relies on those shades of light and dark throughout, and I love the fact that you have changed all the pickups, reloads and shooting and health to now be tactile based and motion tracked. At first it may feel awkward, but it soon becomes second nature and adds even more tension when you run out of bullets and have to change clips and cock the pipe before being a lycanthrope's lunch. The team have really worked hard on making this the best first-person engaging and atmospheric title I have enjoyed so far in PSVR 2. Up with Half-Life Alyx in that sense of excellent visual quality, character models, controls and world building, you start to believe the hype in here. The way the real-time cutscenes are handled can be jarring though, but you can choose to flick to the cinema mode, which literally means it feels like you've just jumped out of the real world into a cinema screen. And again, I can't show you that here because that's the only capture that's not fed to the output screen, and this is something I covered in my review. Now, I will be back with a full comparison to the 2D VR versions, but the team have effectively ported the entire game over, extended the FOV, added foveated rendering, and can now raise our blood pressure and heart rate even more, as we are scared to death in the name of entertainment. This is one of my best so far, and as a horror lover, I was always going to love it. Now, the final one of the pack in today's video is another that takes me back to my youth. Being a turn-based tactical RPG, this is a perfect example of what PSVR 2 offers. Being a dual game that you can play on PS5 and PSVR 2 from the same purchase, and the ability to play online with friends can really recreate the old days of going around your mate's house for a few hours of D&D and rekindles the fighting fantasy days for me. Having the ability to play in VR though really brings all of that board game feel into life in ways that the 2D version can just never replicate. I akin it to a game I loved on PSVR 1, and I interviewed the developer at the time, Corix, where playing multiplayer as floating heads in a 3D tabletop space felt like the perfect blend of the old and new. And the same is true of Demio, with it having an Oculus base from its source port to PSVR 2, so visually it is good enough to deliver a clean image both in and out of the headset and is running under the Unity engine. Effects and materials are basic, but what it may lack in high-end visuals it makes up for in sheer immersion. Now, turn-based combat and certainly old-school RPG mythical action may not be for everyone, but you will know if this is something you would enjoy. And having a life-size dungeon to conquer in your very own personal basement, or at least not your mum's this time, no setup, cleanup or children breaking it, it could be the perfect reason to get online and create your very own band of dungeoneers.
Where should I go?
Now, I do have much more that I'm currently working through at the moment in future videos, as the launch window is so packed with a collection of multi-platform releases and exclusives, just as I covered on Monday with Call of the Mountain and other puzzle titles such as The Last Clockwinder that are far more calm and tranquil games that tax your cerebral rather than your physical VR skills. Be sure that I will be keeping a close eye or two on the most important aspects of any platform, the games themselves moving forward, but I can already state that right now at launch, the sheer wealth and range of titles it has at launch should cover all tastes for the long-term VR players to the fresh-faced newcomers into the fold. But much more to come on that, I'm sure, and I'll certainly be digging a lot deeper into the titles covered here. I hope this quick look and summary of some of the titles I've been enjoying over the past couple of weeks and more to come in PSVR 2 whets your appetite for what is to come. And if you do like what I do, remember you can subscribe, share and all that good stuff, and hit a comment down below which helps the algorithm. Anyway, that's it for now, but I'll be back very soon with more updates on VR and other 2D related titles, so be sure to check those out on here or over on IGN. I'll catch you on the next one.